The World Health Organization estimates that 1.3 billion people in the world currently experience a disability. That's about 16% of the entire population. In the United States, this number is even higher. More than 1 in 4 people living in the US, around 28.7% of all adults, are living with a disability. There are estimates that as much as 70% of adults will experience some kind of temporary disability in their lifetime. That's a staggering figure, and today, I aim to present a little bit about accessibility in general, what steps we've taken at my company, Aviva, to address the needs of our customers who are living with disabilities, and what you can do at your own company to do the same. Hi everyone, my name is Eric Zrinsky and I am a technologist on the DocOps team at Aviva. I'd like to tell you a story about how I first became involved in accessibility. As I'm certain most of us can remember, 2020 was an extremely challenging year. The COVID pandemic was in full swing. We didn't have access to vaccines or antiviral treatments. No one was entirely certain what COVID was, what it could do, and what the long-term lingering effects might be. We were scared. We were isolated. This is my wife Laura on our wedding day. Laura might be one of the smartest, most capable people that I know. On July 7th of 2020, my wife attached the leash to our dog Frankie's collar, yelled goodbye from the bottom of the steps as she walked out the front door of our home, and left. I didn't think anything of it. Each of us had taken the same action hundreds of uneventful times before. But that day was different, and it would change both of our lives indefinitely. About 10 minutes after Laura left, there was a frantic knock at our front door. Opening it, a person was standing outside that I didn't recognize, but his words still echo in my head today, 4 years later. "Is your wife the skinny blonde lady? She's hurt bad." I ran out of my house, nearly knocking the man over, and found Laura at the end of our street. She was disoriented. Her eyes were wild and panicked. Her speech was slurred. As it turned out, Laura was attacked by a neighbor's dog while she was walking. She hit her head on the street, and we'd later find out that she had suffered a concussion, a skull fracture, and 2 brain bleeds. Scary stuff. And because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to be in the hospital with her to make sure that she understood what the doctors were saying, or that she was able to effectively advocate for herself. Those 2 things are significant because they would become representative of some of the challenges we would face over the course of the next several years. Laura struggled to be in any room that was brightly lit, so she often needed to wear sunglasses indoors. She couldn't use any device with a screen for longer than a few minutes without her head and eyes hurting. Concentration and memory were an ongoing challenge. She couldn't work or do any component of her job in the same manner that she had previously. She needed help. I'm a fixer by nature. I'm not satisfied accepting anything as inevitable, and the same was true for Laura's injury. I began to dig into potential solutions and technology that could help her do the things she needed while she recovered. We discovered screen readers and dark modes and adjusted color contrast ratios wherever possible. Through all of this research and experimentation, something occurred to me. This could happen to anyone. So what is accessibility? According to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG for short, accessibility involves making web content usable for as many people as possible, including those with disabilities. WCAG was created by the World Wide Web Consortium in 1999, and it has gone through a few different iterations. The most recent version of the WCAG adds new success criteria to address issues that were identified through user feedback and continued research. Accessibility guidance in the WCAG is organized into 4 main principles, which are often referred to by the acronym POUR. The first letter of the acronym, P, stands for perceivable. This means that information and user interface components must be presented in ways that someone can perceive regardless of any limitations that they might have. In the real world, perceivable accessibility measures can include things like braille signage on elevator buttons, restroom signs and office doors, and auditory signals for crosswalks. In the digital space, perceivable accessibility accommodations take the form of things like alt text for images and transcripts or captions for video and audio content. The next letter in the acronym, O, stands for operable. This includes ensuring that all functionality is available from a keyboard, providing users enough time to read and use content, and designing content in a way that does not cause seizures or physical reactions. It also involves helping users navigate and find content, as well as providing ways to help users with disabilities avoid and correct mistakes. In the real world, this may come in the form of automatic doors and lever-style door handles. In the digital space, keyboard navigation, voice command functions, and adjustable timing all help to make our sites and content more operable. The third letter in the acronym, U, stands for understandable. This involves ensuring that web content is clear and easy to understand, and that the user interface behaves in predictable ways. In the real world, clear and easy to comprehend signage in public spaces, instructional pictograms with universally recognizable images, and consistent layouts in public spaces like airports and malls are all examples of being understandable. In the digital world, avoiding jargon, using predictable navigation structures and design elements, and error suggestion all help to make our sites and content more understandable. The fourth and final letter in our acronym R stands for robust. Content is considered robust when it can be interpreted reliably by a wide variety of user agents, including assistive technologies. This ensures that content remains accessible as technologies evolve. In the real world, this can take the form of flexible furniture and incorporating principles of universal design into public spaces. I could spend the entire day talking about universal design alone, but we'll save that for another talk. In the digital world, robust takes the form of things like semantic HTML tags to improve accessibility across devices, and creating devices that are compatible with screen readers, voice recognition software, and other assistive technologies. These four principles help to make both the real world and our digital worlds more accessible to a broad range of users, including those with auditory, cognitive, neurological, physical, speech, and visual impairments. According to the W3C, accessibility is important for several key reasons. To begin, inclusivity and equal access. Accessibility ensures that people with disabilities have the same access to information, services, and opportunities as everyone else. This promotes inclusive and equal access, which are fundamental human rights. 2. There are legal and ethical obligations. Many countries have laws and regulations that require digital content to be accessible to people with disabilities. Complying with these laws not only avoids legal repercussions, but also demonstrates a commitment to ethical practices and social responsibility. Broader audience reach. Accessible websites and digital content can reach a larger audience, including people with disabilities, the elderly, and those with temporary impairments. This can lead to increased engagement, customer satisfaction, and potential market growth. Enhanced usability for all users is the fourth reason. Accessibility improvements often lead to better usability for all users, not just those with disabilities. Features such as cleaner navigation, better color contrast, and more descriptive content can enhance the overall user experience for everyone. The final reason that we'll provide is corporate social responsibility, or CSR. Demonstrating a commitment to accessibility reflects positively on an organization's brand and reputation. It shows that the organization values diversity and is dedicated to serving all members of the community. In 2021, the company that I worked for was acquired by my current company, Aviva. Post-acquisition, one of the first projects that we began to work on was content unification on a common portal. We knew that the accessibility features were lacking in our documentation and on the portal. Technical writing isn't always the first place you think of when you think about driving company-wide accessibility improvements, but we typically fly under the radar a bit. It gave us the latitude to experiment and try new things without having to worry about being under the microscope. We collaborated with our new portal provider ZoomIn to push the limits of what was possible for our docs, our portal theme and template, and our delivery of digital media to address multiple learning modalities. One of the first things we did was use an accessibility checker to identify potential issues on our documentation portal. Many free tools are available to perform these kinds of checks, but we used the access scan provided by Accessiby for our initial scan. This gave us a starting point for potential CSS and template changes we needed to make to improve the accessibility of our portal and bring it into WCAG compliance. Next, we implemented the UserWay widget. With the gaps and needs identified on our portal, we realized that we had a lot of work that would be expensive to complete and maintain internally. Through our research, we became aware of several third-party accessibility plugins that we could use on our portal to mitigate a lot of our issues for much less time and money. We started with a free trial of the UserWay accessibility widget. Once we integrated their tag into the header of our portal, we were able to use their reporting suite to identify additional issues and to get an overall accessibility score for our portal. Our initial score was not great. In fact, UserWay rated our WCAG compliance at 50%, failing by most educational standards. While this was a bit of a shock, we didn't let it deter us. We explored the features available in UserWay and determined that the software would save us thousands of dollars in development costs, countless weeks or months in time to deployment, and future-proofing our site against the inevitable changes to the WCAG standards. After completing the integration, our score jumped from 50% compliance to nearly 97% compliance in just a few short months. After rectifying a lot of the structural changes to our portal with the UserWay widget, we found one of the biggest areas of opportunity for accessibility was directly related to the images within our docs, namely the use of alt text. Alt text, or alternative text, is a written description of an image that is embedded in the HTML code of the web page. It is used to convey the context and the function of images to users who may not be able to see them. Alt text is displayed in place of an image if the image fails to load, and is read by screen readers to provide context to visually impaired users. We researched the standards and best practices for writing effective alt text copy. We compiled this information into our internal guidance and added it to our technical writing handbook. This part of our accessibility journey will be an ongoing work in progress. We have close to 500,000 images in our database, and writing copy for all of those images at once is just not feasible. As a team, we decided we would implement alt text for images in any new documents we create, and we would add alt text to images in existing documents whenever we updated them. In addition to improvements to our images, we also implemented a rigorous set of standards for the screencast videos that we produce. Captions and transcripts were one of the first things we dug into. All of the videos that we produce at Aviva now have closed captioning in English, but we're also working to provide captions in several of the other languages supported by our localization team. Captions allow our customers to read along with the video if they can't hear it. In addition to captions, we've implemented user-expandable content blocks below each video that contain transcripts for each video. This may seem like duplicated effort, but captions serve a different audience than transcripts. Transcripts are useful for visually impaired users because they can be consumed by refreshable braille displays for deaf-blind users who cannot see or hear our video content, but still would benefit from the information contained within. Within our videos, we created templates and asset libraries to standardize the starting point for all of our writers. Our annotations and callouts pass contrast ratio checks based on their hex color codes. This is important because users with low vision may not be able to differentiate between the background and annotation with an insufficient color contrast ratio. Finally, one of the last pieces of accessibility that we're beginning to implement for our screencast is descriptive audio. Descriptive audio is narration added to the soundtrack to describe important visual details that cannot be understood from the main soundtrack alone. This includes actions, facial expressions, scene changes, text on the screen, and other visual content essential for understanding the story or information being presented. Most modern video hosts support adding a descriptive audio track that a user can enable when they need it. Perhaps one of the most exciting parts of our accessibility journey comes as a result of our participation in 2 different R&D hackathons. Let me preface what I'm about to talk about next by saying that the hacks that we built have not yet been productized and are not yet live for our customers. They do, however, provide us with validation for our proof of concepts and hypotheses. One of the first hacks that we were able to stand up was an implementation of the Bionic Reading REST API. If you're unfamiliar with Bionic Reading, it's a method designed to enhance the reading experience by guiding someone's eyes through the text more efficiently. This technique involves highlighting or bolding the first few letters of each word in a passage, which can help readers process text more quickly and with better comprehension. The approach leverages the brain's natural ability to fill in the rest of the word, making reading faster and less mentally taxing. There isn't uniform agreement about the effectiveness of Bionic Reading, but the neurodivergent users who tested it with us reported that it was almost like magic to them, and that they were able to comprehend something after one read-through rather than multiple. Another hack that we created a proof of concept for is the use of contextual in-app help fed by our existing documentation. Contextual in-app help refers to providing users with assistance and guidance within the application interface exactly where and when they need it. There are a lot of third-party tools out there that can accomplish this, but we already had an existing contract with Pendo and decided to leverage their technology stack for our hack. Contextual help is valuable for accessibility for several reasons. It provides immediate assistance without requiring users to leave their current task. This is particularly beneficial for individuals with cognitive disabilities who may find it challenging to navigate away from their task and then return. It provides a reduction in cognitive load by providing relevant information at the point of need. Users don't need to remember instructions or search through documentation to find what they need. Users with visual impairments can benefit from contextual help that guides them through complex tasks and forms, improving navigation and increasing the likelihood of successful task completion. In the most recent hackathon that we participated in, we decided that we wanted to capitalize on the democratization of artificial intelligence tools. We solicited the help of 2 developers from our localization team and managed to train a large language model on documentation for one of our products. We focused on using source material from one product to avoid any potential noise or hallucination that might result from multiple similar data points. We were able to leverage the existing infrastructure of an AI tool that our R&D team is developing. The interface for our hack allows a user to enter a question. The software searches the data that it was trained on, interprets what information that is needed to pull out based on what is asked, and then creates a custom response for a user based on that information. Part of our hack allowed users to enter their input in the language of their choosing, either through text or with their voice, and our software provided written and verbal responses in the same language. Oftentimes, localization is overlooked as a key facet of accessibility, but providing customer education materials in the language that someone is most comfortable in can help to alleviate any misunderstanding that they may have while working outside of their preferred language. After we started to see results from our accessibility efforts and we had some exciting things to share, we began to reach out to other departments across our company. One of the first groups we reached out to was our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion team. The DE&I team helped us to socialize our efforts with other groups across the organization and provided us with valuable feedback. Our user experience team, which is undertaking accessibility improvement measures of their own, provided us with a means to perform usability testing for our new changes and helped us to solicit valuable customer feedback. This gives us a pipeline of users who can test our improvements and help us to refine what is needed to make them most useful. Our learning and training team was most excited about the UserWay widget and are in the process of acquiring a license for their learning management system. This helps to provide a unified education experience wherever our customers use resources created by the learning and training team and our documentation portal. Accessibility improvements at your own company and in your own work don't need to be difficult or expensive to implement. You should start with free and low-cost options first to test the waters and gauge the potential for wider adoption. Moving the needle and showing meaningful results is often the best way to capture buy-in from management and your executive team, especially if what you have accomplished can help with retention, engagement, and go-to-market cost reduction. When you think about personally adopting accessibility, consider the model of striving to improve by 1% daily. Eventually, all of those 1% gains add up to major changes. With any new accessibility initiative, or really any new initiative, finding and obtaining an executive champion or sponsor can add weight and legitimacy to your efforts and expedite adoption across the larger company. An executive sponsor ensures that the accessibility program aligns with the company's strategic goals and vision. They can integrate accessibility into the broader organizational strategy, making it a priority across all departments. Accessibility initiatives often require significant resources, including time, money, and personnel. An executive sponsor can secure the necessary resources and budget to implement and sustain the program. Executive sponsors have the authority to make decisions and influence other leaders within the organization. Their backing can drive cross-departmental collaboration and ensure that accessibility is prioritized at all levels. Accessibility often intersects with legal and regulatory requirements. An executive sponsor can help navigate these complexities, ensuring the company meets its legal obligations and avoids any potential penalties. Long-term commitment to accessibility requires ongoing effort and vigilance. An executive sponsor can help sustain this commitment over time, ensuring that accessibility remains a continuous priority rather than a one-time project. When socializing accessibility changes widely, remember that you're talking about changes that can make things better for real people. Emotional pleas do not often go as far as we might like in business, but there are several less abstract themes that you should mention when you advocate for accessibility changes at your company. Accessible websites and applications can reach a broader audience, including people with disabilities, the elderly, and those with temporary impairments. This expands the potential customer base. As I mentioned earlier, there are currently around 1 billion people living with a disability. Making content accessible for everyone ensures that you aren't alienating potential customer segments. Highlighting the business benefits of accessibility wins such as improved customer satisfaction, expanded market reach, and enhanced brand reputation can encourage other departments to invest in accessibility. Demonstrating the return on investment of accessibility efforts can be a powerful motivator for adopting best practices. Accessibility improvements often enhance usability for all customers. Features like clear navigation, better color contrast, and more descriptive content benefit everyone, not just those with disabilities. Improved usability resulting from accessibility improvements can lead to higher customer satisfaction, better engagement, and increased likelihood of repeat visits and conversions. Many countries have laws and regulations that require digital content to be accessible. For example, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA in the US, and the European Accessibility Act in the EU. Compliance reduces the risk of legal action and fines. Accessibility improvements can help to protect you from lawsuits and legal challenges, which can be expensive and hurt your company's reputation. Hiring in the software world can be competitive and difficult. Accessibility improvements can be a boon to those efforts because they can also benefit employees, particularly those with disabilities. An accessible work environment can lead to higher productivity, job satisfaction, and retention. Additionally, a diverse and inclusive workplace that values accessibility can attract top talent and reduce turnover, contributing to a positive organizational culture. At Aviva, we have a fairly large writing team. Getting all of our writers on the same page with new initiatives can be challenging. One of the ways that we attempted to combat that is by spinning up Tiger teams and communities of practice. Tiger teams are small, cross-functional groups of experts brought together to solve specific, complex problems. For accessibility initiatives, they can rapidly address urgent accessibility issues, create actionable plans, and implement changes efficiently. Their focused expertise ensures that accessibility solutions are practical and effective. Tiger teams are designed to work quickly and efficiently, which is crucial for jumpstarting accessibility initiatives. They can identify and address immediate accessibility barriers, thereby laying a strong foundation for broader, long-term efforts. Communities of practice provide a platform for employees to share knowledge, best practices, and experiences related to accessibility. This collective learning environment helps in spreading awareness and building a culture of accessibility throughout the organization. COPs foster ongoing engagement with accessibility topics, ensuring continuous improvements and innovation. They keep the momentum going after the initial implementation phase by regularly discussing new ideas, tools, and strategies. Working accessibility best practices into your day-to-day interactions with coworkers can be equally beneficial in fostering these improvements across your company. There are a lot of little things that go a long way. It can be difficult for teams to stay up to date on the changes to the WCAG, and staying compliant once you have implemented your accessibility program is important. Appoint one individual who incorporates accessibility monitoring and best practices directly into their responsibilities. This person can advocate for changes within the team and provide updates at regular intervals. The International Association of Accessibility Professionals is an organization that brings together accessibility-minded professionals across the world and is an incredible resource for courses, webinars, meetups, and various other learning materials. The IAAP is responsible for the Certified Professional in Accessibility Core Competencies certification, a generalized certification that covers accessibility laws, general principles, and concepts like universal design. I've gone through the CPAC learning course myself, and it's filled with lots of great information that is presented in an easily understood way. When you compose an email, avoid using tables as they're difficult for screen readers to navigate, and they only should be used for tabular data, not a layout purpose. Avoid colors with poor contrast, and never use color to convey meaning. Avoid flashing images and animation, especially animations that someone cannot pause. Use a legible sans serif font such as Arial, Calibri, Helvetica, Tahoma, or similar for your copy, and break text into short paragraphs. If your company uses Microsoft Teams or Zoom for your virtual meetings, both of these applications allow for live captioning. If you use a different virtual meeting application or one where live captioning isn't available, PowerPoint and Google Slides offer similar captioning functionality that is visible when you share your screen. Live captioning is important for individuals who may have difficulty hearing. They also can benefit individuals who are deaf-blind and who make use of refreshable braille displays. Partnering with your UX team is a great way to leverage existing customer feedback infrastructure. UX teams specialize in understanding user behaviors, needs, and motivations through direct feedback and user testing. UX professionals are often well-versed in these standards and can provide valuable insights into how to meet them effectively. Soliciting customer feedback allows for continuous improvement of documentation. By working with UX teams to gather and analyze feedback, technical writers can make iterative enhancements that address real user needs and preferences. Make sure that people with disabilities and accessibility needs are an integral part of your testing process. There are lots of great tools out there to help you improve the accessibility of your work. Many of these tools offer free trials and low-cost paid options that are extremely affordable, especially when you consider the cost of building some of this technology in-house. While not technically billed as an accessibility tool, the Hemingway editor has a number of features that help you to improve and simplify your writing. At Aviva, this is especially important for us when we consider the accessibility implications of translation. Simple, clear, and colloquial-free language is critical to a successful translation, and the Hemingway editor is a great tool for cleaning up your writing. I'm especially a fan of the readability scale that it provides, as we typically aim for writing that is between a 6th and 9th grade reading level. Out of all the tools that we use, the UserWay Accessibility widget had the most immediate impact on our documentation portal. It is extremely low cost, and there's even a free version available. There are a lot of great accessibility features that customers can toggle on and off at their will, and they can even set up profiles that will persist for them on your site anytime they return. We're still early in our adoption of Pendo, but we've experimented with it quite a bit during our hackathons. With it, we were able to create an in-app resource center that provides contextually relevant help to our customers based on the page they are on in the application or the actions they've taken in the application. While on the surface this may not seem directly related to accessibility, it helps to reduce cognitive load, which can be beneficial for individuals who experience ADHD, various forms of the autism spectrum, and various other forms of neurodivergence. One of the best ways of encouraging others at your organization to actively participate in improving accessibility at your company is to celebrate your success openly and widely. Celebrating accessibility wins within an organization not only recognizes and reinforces the efforts of those involved, but also serves as a powerful tool to promote awareness, inspire action, and integrate accessibility into the fabric of the organization's culture. By showcasing the benefits of accessibility initiatives, companies can encourage widespread adoption of best practices and create a more inclusive and supportive environment for all. Highlighting success stories and showcasing the efforts of individuals and teams who have made significant contributions to accessibility can create role models within the organization. These role models can inspire others to take similar actions and adopt best practices in their work. Regularly celebrating accessibility achievements helps to embed accessibility into the organizational culture. It signals to all employees that accessibility is a core value and an ongoing priority, not just a one-time initiative. Take pride in your company's inclusivity, and both your customers and your coworkers will take notice. Remember that statistic I gave you at the start of my presentation? Nearly 70% of all adults will experience at least a temporary disability at some point in their lives. That means that one day, myself, or you, or somebody you know and care about may need these tools and these kinds of accommodations. In case you were wondering, after a few years of hard work, persistence, and relying on accessibility tools, Laura made a full recovery and is currently working on completing her doctorate. We even have a daughter now. My hope is that when my daughter is older, the kind of accommodations and technologies I talked about today will be pervasive and widely available should she ever need them. When we make our systems, our processes, our documentation, and our software accessible for all, everyone wins. Thanks for listening, and I can't wait to see what you create.
Okay, that was incredible. I There was no slides? I don't know. That was so great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for and it was so personal at the beginning. I admittedly teared up. I was like, "Ugh, like this is what's gonna get me this afternoon." So I appreciate you being so open and vulnerable and being willing to like not only share this knowledge with our community, but also be able to like open up personally. That's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important thing to remember, right? Like accessibility is very personal. It's one of those things that each person has their own individual encounters with and struggles with. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so important to me is like I think that we often think about it in these sort of broad strokes that only impact other people. But the truth is that, in our lifetime, we're likely to need some kind of accessibility accommodation ourselves. So.
Absolutely. All right. So we have to start with convincing other people that this is important. And you mentioned, the kind of arguments that you can use in your pitch, but I want to drill into like, who do you need to convince? Like if you're in an organization and you have to like give this pitch, advocate for it, who do you recommend going to in your organization?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different approaches. For me specifically, our executive sponsor for our disability at Aviva Group happens to be our marketing CMO. And I think honestly, the more that you can tie this to a business benefit, saying, this is going to increase sales or this will increase retention, like being able to show like there are numbers that we can impact by this directly kind of helps to get that sort of buy-in. But we were really fortunate in the technical rating org that our VP Forrest, who's actually on the call right now, is a pretty big advocate for these sort of things. So I think finding someone in the leadership level who cares about this stuff and kind of making the pitch there, starting with someone that you have an easy in with. If you don't have that, I would definitely recommend doing some experimentation and being able to demonstrate some benefits, say like I can move the needle on this, it would take minimum effort to do this. And maybe even starting with your UX team or your engineering teams and say like, hey, look, if we thought about things differently, we might be able to impact these changes. But it's going to differ from organization to organization. Like sometimes it's harder to do these things in much larger organizations. So starting small, I think, is probably where I would say.
Oh, absolutely. I think in my experience also, it's exactly what you said, getting that top down buy-in, because that is how you can kind of make like broad enforceable change. Of course, individual like, writers, engineers, designers, like of course can make a massive impact if you're having that in mind with your work. But yeah, advocating, like having someone on leadership in your side, ooh, that's nice. That's good. And then of course, also we need to touch on how do you, I guess enforcement, that sounds so strict, but the idea of like, are you using automated tools to help with docs updates and like check that the content passes? Are you manually checking that? Like, how are you ensuring that what you're putting out into the world like agrees with the standards that you set?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because that's often where these things fall down, right? And an over reliance on tools and automated checks is only going to get you so far because there's inevitably going to be things that slip through the cracks. So we have an accessibility community of practice that we've been doing a lot of research and figuring things out about how to impact specific aspects of the documentation we create. So we have like an editorial COP where we've been presenting them with audit checks and different guidelines and things that they can do. But there is this sort of manual human intervention that's absolutely required. I think setting up, either like a quarterly audit for certain aspects of your accessibility program is a really good thing. If you can't do it that frequently, doing it at least once or twice a year, I think is good. WCAG changes about once a quarter, maybe sometimes twice a year. So there are standards to be aware of. And I think that, like, I know that we had some comments about those kind of overlays can be somewhat problematic. And I definitely agree. Like they're not a end all be all. They don't solve every problem. But when we were looking at something like 50% compliance and being able to jump up that significantly based on the standards that they were presenting, even that iterative improvement is going to be better than what you're offering. So I think like that kind of mindset that like we may not get this right all the time, but if we keep improving and keep checking what we're doing, we're going to eventually make it where it continues to be accessible for everyone.
Yeah, thank you for emphasizing that it changes, because I've definitely worked in organizations where it's like, all right, we're up to standards now. And then it's like nothing gets checked for multiple years. And you're like, okay, but the technology evolves. Like, what we recognize as accessible changes, and we need to be able to like have a system for revisiting that. So that is so important. And then something that, I always notice, if you put in automation, you do that kind of always falls through the cracks is the alt text, because you can put in checkers that it's there, but you're not necessarily screening it for quality. And we got a couple questions about like, writing good alt text for screenshots, especially in documentation, like what is too much, what is too little. Do you have any resources or tips that you could recommend?
I had shared a link to a pretty good resource for writing alt text. I think I haven't really encountered any tools that do a great job yet. We've experimented with
Me
enough, because I
neither.
mentioned it in my talk. We have about 500,000 images. Writing that much alt text is a huge endeavor. Nothing AI driven has really done an excellent job yet, especially since it has to kind of analyze what you have in your image. But I think having alt text checks at the publication time, so whoever's reviewing your doc checks the images for alt text, I think is like probably maybe the best place to have that sort of thing. And remembering that alt text is primarily geared towards screen readers, so keeping mindful of the amount of characters you're using in your alt text, because someone needs to be able to get through that caption pretty quickly, I think is important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speaking of these practices and putting them into practice, you know what I mean? These techniques, putting them into practice. Can you suggest a few, maybe like one or two, what you would consider like high impact, low effort, if you are maybe a sole documentarian or you have a small team and you want to improve the readability of your docs?
Honestly, and this is not a pitch for this company, but that user way widget was miraculous for us. I mean, like the amount,
I
it's
mean,
a
if it's good,
single,
it's good.
yeah, it's a single tag that just goes into the header of your template. And that alone, I mean, the cost is pretty low too. I think it's like less than $100 a month or something like that for a tool that, saves you thousands of dollars in terms of development efforts for those sort of things. So I think that is probably the first thing. But I think just taking a look at even making things more accessible internally. So looking at your internal docs. So if you don't have the buy-in for the wider company for public things yet, do all the experimenting you want on your, internal wikis and your internal user guides and stuff like that, and be able to demonstrate, like, look at the improvements that we have here. This is something that maybe we can have a little bit more budget for doing this for customers and things like that.
Oh, absolutely. And your colleagues will appreciate you so much, because that's almost always where a lot of this accessibility falls short. Like, as someone who needs a lot of those accessibility features, I love when internal docs actually reflect that. And then, final question, what did you use to create that gorgeous video?
I got a lot of the clips from Storyblocks, which is a sort of aggregator of video content and clips and things like that. And then I just put it all together in Final Cut Pro.
Oh my gosh, amazing. And then if anyone has more questions or wants to talk to you more about this, where can they find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best thing. So I think it's just my first and last name, Eric.Zrinsky, for the address.
Oh my God, amazing. Thank you so much for bringing this super important topic to our audience. And yeah, just really appreciate that. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.